Sitting down today with Reema, transmedia artist and professor at the University of Houston. Hey Reema, how are you today?
Good, how are you?
Pretty good. It's a little chilly for my taste, but you know, it's Houston and I'm a wimp when it comes to the cold.
Yeah.
So I had the joy of getting to see some of your work, and especially this super cool book right here, as you notice. I spent a lot of time with it, and I just couldn't help myself. I had to sit down and talk to you about it some more. But to get started, let's talk about you. Like,
Okay.
how did you end up where you are right now?
That's a long story. It starts in my childhood,
Okay.
and I have been unpacking a lot of things from my childhood. Just started to learn about how I was a performer and a storyteller and an artist and all of these different facets when I was 2, 3 years old, and just kept expanding as I got older. And then by the age of 17, I started working on my first novel.
Yeah.
And I decided, you know what, I want to get a fallback degree so I can write, but this will fund my writing. Because I totally bought into the notion that artists don't make money.
Right.
Writers don't make money.
Right. You need that stability.
So I got a degree in interior design, and I've been a practicing designer for the past 11 years now. And I was really, very discontented in that role.
Mm-hmm.
I liked parts of it, but not all of it. And so a few years ago, I actually started to pick apart what is it that drives me, who am I, what do I want to do. And somewhere in the time that I was actually being an interior designer full-time, I started a novel with a friend of mine called Alice in Dark.
Okay. A collaborative piece?
Collaborative piece. We're still working on it. It's going to be my thesis project. And it turned from a book of pictures and words into pictures and words and bonus features, and we've continued to work on that ever since 2009.
Okay.
And that was really instrumental for me. And in 2012, we started our own company because a lot of publishers were like, well, it would be great if you took out the pictures and bonus features. Okay.
You're missing the
Great.
point. That's kind of tragic to me, but I know that you enjoy the freedoms that come with self-publishing, right?
I do. The publishing industry has gotten so specific. You can do this, you can't do that. These are the few things that we're looking for because this is what the trend is and this is where the market's going. Everything outside of that, not right now, not so much. Mm-hmm. And there's so many people trying to enter into that space, and what I'm doing is not that space.
Right.
What was really disheartening for me was when we closed the company, we folded it. And that was 2014, and that's what launched me into this, what am I doing with my life? And I landed here, Transmedia storytelling.
Very cool. You're still in close relations, obviously, since you're still working on Alice in Dark together, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, that is our brainchild. We will forever be married to that together.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Let's talk about home a little bit. I spent about a month pretty much knee deep in it. I really enjoyed it a great deal. I especially love that it seems to, at least from my perspective, encumber all the ways in which we as human beings remember. The written word, the visual, the actual experiences that you share that are almost like nonfiction, or that read like nonfiction, was very engaging and in an all-encompassing way. And I found that very provocative in one sense and also very comforting at the same time. So would you call this a collection of poems, a collection of memories? How would you define the work?
It is a story told in pictures, prose, and poetry. And it started out as just journal entries. I told myself I'm going to journal while I'm in France for this residency, and I'm going to journal when the French students come over to Houston. And it was really important for me to have 7 days of journaling there and 7 days of journaling here. And then I created work from that. Printed them all out, chopped them all up, and started to pull out things from that. And I noticed a pattern that there was a lot of memories of home coming up for me. And my professor really encouraged me. He's like, this is your gold. This is where it's at. Follow that. And I had been really holding back from dealing with a lot of things in my home country. And my mother even encouraged me. She's like, you need to do this now. You've got the time and the space. Push through this. And so that's what it is for me. It's a collection of my memories, my feelings, my emotions of that.
So then would you say the creation of this work was a cathartic experience?
Definitely.
Yeah. I feel that just about any time I go to create something, that emotion is there, but especially something I imagine that is tied so strongly to personal memory and personal experience. How could it not be? We touched a little bit on self-publishing. I know for this text in particular was a handcrafted project at first, correct?
Yeah.
What are the pros and cons of that kind of experience
So
versus sending your work to a printer?
right. So in its original form, it was hand-bound, hand-printed, and I really enjoyed the process of that, figuring it out. But I was also extremely frustrated with the process of that and figuring it out.
I can empathize.
Yes, there were some bloody fingers, and how do I describe it? It was really nice to hold it in my hand at the end of the day because a lot of thought went into it, laying it out, making sure everything was right, collecting all these other pieces, scanning things in, and then finally having it in my hand. It was just a wonderful moment. And then I think a droplet of water got onto one of them, and I was like, okay, this is why I do not like this.
I can appreciate that as well. You try so hard. I want to take a moment and go through some quotes from the text itself that really stood out for me. Not that I didn't value everything, but there were some moments that it just especially resonated with me personally. So the first one, and it's towards the front of the book, it's page 14, was, I internalized that if I wanted to get ahead in life, I had to have balls to make it a man's world.
Yeah.
So for me, as a kid, I was a big tomboy, or that label was applied to me quite often by other people because I wasn't as into the girlier American canon girly of pink Barbies, and I would rather play, with everybody else, not necessarily in the room with my skirts and my frilly flowers. I just wanted to play with the Ninja Turtle toys. I wanted the action figures. I wanted, Wolverine with his claws out. And for a long time, my mother was very hippie, so she very much endorsed, okay, if that's what you want to do. And in fact, even in high school, when I told her, I was like, Mom, I think I'm bisexual. I think I like ladies as much as I like guys. She was like, okay, sure, But it was never something that was taken seriously. It was always kind of treated as a passing fancy. So now we're in a place and in a world where gender fluidity is maybe not as accepted as it should be, but is more readily discussed, right? So finding a place where you're no longer forced to identify male or female, but then you still have these reflections of the past that you were very much a part of, right? And how do you coincide those experiences and that memory with the experiences that you have now, or that you can witness other or new young people having?
Yeah, I have been unpacking a lot of my childhood, not only who I was as an artist and a creator, but who I was in terms of gender and sexuality. And even in first grade, I remember playing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and the boys... Yes!
Sorry.
Yes!
That was my preferred.
And the boys were like, well, you're a girl, you need to play April. And I was like, no, I want to be a turtle. So other people were putting gender on me, and I remember sort of taking up that mantle, because a part of me is also a people pleaser, which I've been trying to deconstruct. And also all of the media at the time was really genderized, especially when I was coming into my teens. Tomb Raider.
Yeah.
It's basically a dude with breasts.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And these other types of things, either you're a dude with breast or you're like super effeminate. And there's really no in between. And I didn't want to be that super effeminate, girly, helpless person that I felt like I was supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And especially being in the Middle East, like it's very genderized.
Yes.
And that just did not sit well with me. Why does my brother get to do this and I don't? Well, you're a girl. Excuse me. Like I would just go through the roof. And so grappling with that is kind of where I was in writing that.
That makes sense. So I imagine that this work then may have caused some personal ripples for you.
Yeah.
Especially being a citizen of the Middle East. One of my closest friend is an Iraqi war refugee, and she's consistently conveyed to me the gender standards of her population, her own family, and how it's become very difficult for her because she's, as they call, very Americanized. So anything that she would do to deviate from that preset path that they laid before her was because she was an Americanized Middle Eastern person. Do you feel that has also been laid at your feet, that it's maybe not attributed as much to your own personal growth, but what you've been influenced by?
There's definitely a lot of influence from both cultures that I've been unpacking. This work was just the start of it. Who am I in both of these cultures or outside of both of these cultures? What is it that they put upon me and what is it that is me inside of this? And that's incredibly difficult to pull apart.
The whole book's worth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about another one. Since we kind of touched on being Middle Eastern, there are some moments in the text where you flip into another language. It goes from English to, is it Arabic?
Arabic, yeah.
So, and I knew from the start that the translation was very accurate and very well done, and our translator was like, well, they're either a native speaker or they've extensively studied the language. So, and of course, I wanted to ask you, what is the pertinence of language and the pertinence of the switch for you?
I grew up with both languages. I was taught from basically the time I was born. And I think in both.
Okay.
I think there's a very poignant quote in there. My mother said that I act American, but I think Arab. And it's so true. And to leave that out would be disingenuous to myself and my experience and the whole writing of this piece. Definitely.
And that poem itself is quite lovely. So, and I appreciated the mirror image. Your first person subject, do you comfortably identify that with yourself, since some of these are journal excerpts?
Can you restate the question?
Like the fact that most of it is coming from I.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're standing from I, this, me, you, do you directly associate the speaker in your poetry and in this work as your own voice, or is it an entity separate from yourself?
I kind of switch back and forth depending on the mood.
Okay.
And sometimes it is me taking on a whole country's worth, or me taking on the role of the persona of someone else who's gone through this, or a majority of people who've felt this way. And other times it's very personal to myself. I think there's a poem in there about, the grains of sand coming in a hot, dusty wind, and that was a direct parallel of my childhood to that moment in time when I was writing the poem in Marfa, Texas. They were so personal to me, nobody else would understand that.
Makes sense. So it's a work both in empathy towards oneself and self-reflection, and an empathy towards others.
Yeah.
Lovely. Let's talk about, you have a line that really stuck out for me. It was, reality is not really real in any media. Do you consider this a social commentary? It also kind of came off as like a little like you're throwing shade at yourself. And as you've already established that it was an effort in self-reflection and emotional cathartic release, Do you feel like you yourself are buying into this media that's not real, or are you standing up in opposition to it?
A little bit of both, actually.
Okay.
I internalized a lot of media in my teens, and seeing, oh, okay, this is what life is like. This is, to be the best human I want to be. Let's see what other humans are doing on the TV, and let's do that. And that's not real. Also, the whole idea of reality TV, that's not real.
Yeah.
And we keep, in this culture right now, keep throwing things at us with this word real or natural. And they're not real or natural in any way. And so I'm also talking about that.
I want us to talk about the imagery in the book, because we have some really lovely photos, and I want to call them collage works. And we'll definitely have to feature some of these in the image. But one of the really cool features I thought about this, which I'm guessing your publishing people weren't as thrilled on these type of endeavors, but I thought it was so cool, the concept of augmented reality. So in the book, we have a number of images at the start of every chapter. And you can download an application, a free application to your cell phone, in which you can then scan it. Essentially, the phone scans the image and then provides you an additional image as to what you were doing when you were creating the piece. Am I?
Actually, the images in the augmented reality experience are my only photos left of home.
That's an interesting choice. Why the comparison of the two? Or what called to you to do so?
So I talk about home a lot. I allude to home. There's only one poem in which I actually state where I'm specifically from. And all of the imagery, the actual painted images and the photographs are not of home. These are things that called to me at the time that I took pictures of, either in France or in Marfa, that in some way resonated with me about home. But I wanted to pay homage to my actual home country, and it really meant a lot to me to have these images there. The whole app itself is actually a metaphor for memory. So it's a work in progress. It's not completed yet. And when it's completed, it's actually going to have a splash page that has a photo that I've augmented of my grandparents. And then you can go from there into the app. And when you scan the image, you get a picture of my home country. And then from there, it's actually interactive, and you can touch and move your finger around, and it starts erasing parts of the image. And the idea is when you close the app and you open it again, that part of the image stays disappeared, as a metaphor for what is happening in my mind of what I remember of home. It's disappearing. The more I access my memories, the more I change my memories.
I was very confused because at first I noticed that was happening when I would just show somebody else the images, and I would pull the app back up, and where I had touched it, it was gone, and I was like, I don't know what's happening. Why is this happening? And that is literally the feeling that you must have when you're trying to remember these things. Like there's a real sense of loss, and you definitely immersed me in that emotion. Not to the depth that I realize it now means, but it's definitely working.
Yeah, I wanted, so when the app is completely done, I want people to open it back up and like showing their friends and, hey, did you see why is, and then even if they erase more of it, then it just stays disappeared. So they are now the keepers of my memory. And how are they going to treat my memories? How are they going to treat my home?
That to me says that you have an interest in immersing your audience in your content. Yes. Is there a way in your current work that you feel like you're doing this as well?
Yeah, it's a really big part of multi-platform storytelling for me. Is I'm not replicating Alice in Dark, the book, into Alice in Dark, the game, like Tomb Raider the game and Tomb Raider the movie. They're, very similar stories. I want to use media in a way that immerses audiences, that is not replicating what's already been done. The app was very specific and very intentional for home, in that I couldn't do this in any other media or platform. This was the only media and platform that I could recreate that idea of memory, was through augmented reality, through a mobile phone.
So do you feel that you come against what I like to call the fine arts barrier, where you very much feel impassioned and validated in the creation of a work, but like, for example, myself as a printmaker, I'm consistently told, well, that's just a craft, it's not a fine art. And when you're presented with this type of attitude towards your work, do you have a defense mechanism, or does it just roll off your back? Does it affect you?
It really just rolls off my back. If that's what someone believes, power to you, but that's not what I believe. I really sit at a crossroads between commercial and like high art or fine art. And I see this a lot, like, you can't, I was told this before I got into the program, if you're going to create like a commercial book, people are going to look at you very funny when you create your thesis. And so that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm creating a commercial book for my thesis and showing, what, this can be fine art, this can be commercial work. So what?
Yeah.
What are labels anyway?
Limitations.
Yeah. These are things that some people have collectively come together to agree, it's not this, it's only this. But why not that?
Right. It seems counterproductive to the concept of creation as a whole. Like, why would we put certain things in an off-limit box?
Yeah. To me, when I talk about art, I also talk about science. These hard sciences or soft sciences, they're all art. They're all very creative. You're thinking about problems, thoughts, ideas, philosophies, and coming up with creative solutions to understand them.
Right.
Sometimes it's visual, sometimes it's data-driven. It could be a game. Who the hell cares what that expression is? It's all art to me. Very
cool. So it's, in your book, you mention a specific film by Daniela Ortiz, right? Do you want to talk a little bit about how that has influenced your own work, or maybe just this piece itself? Or?
So there were two that I had seen when I was in France. We were in Nantes in a museum that I don't remember the name of. And one of them was about a man who was standing up nude from the waist down, and a woman who was sitting down nude. And then the other one was about someone injecting themselves and reading, I think, the Constitution of their country. I can't remember which one Daniela Ortiz was.
She was the Constitution one.
Okay. I really enjoyed watching that. Not at first. It took me a while. I was also really tired, so it gave me an excuse to sit down. Those French people, they can walk.
Yes, they walk everywhere, right?
Yeah, they're like, it's just right there. It's just right there. And it's like 20 miles later, you're like, where is it? So that's where I was. My feet were hurting. I was tired. I sat down and I watched this, and I really imbued it. And what spoke to me was this person who looked like they identified as a woman, in a blank room with a white table, just themselves and this text. Either a constitution or something political is what I understood. It was in a language I didn't understand.
Legal jargon.
And injecting herself with something. And as she continues reading, her speech becomes really slurred, very thick. You can see her starting to droop and really trying to push through and continue talking and continue reading this thing. And I was really taken aback by what that metaphor and symbolism was. Like, is this government, this political entity, whatever this text is embodying for her, doing that to them as a people? Is she referencing her people through her body? is she referencing herself through this work? I just kept thinking of all the different possibilities for that, and that was really beautiful to me.
It sounds like you'd have to go look for it. You mentioned your home country several times with the work. When you say home country, do you consistently think of the same place?
I do.
Then and now?
Yeah. I think Johann Hari summed it up really well in his book Lost Connections, is that people from third world countries, I don't know if that's PC to say anymore, I don't know, I resonated with it. He was talking about this woman who was from Turkey, and she had moved to Europe, and she was now living in her apartment, and she's like, well, home. And they're like, where's home? She's like, Turkey. They're like, no, but like, where's home? And she's like, no, Turkey. The whole country is her home. And when she was living in Europe, she was like, yeah, my home is just my apartment. And that's really how I feel now, is home is that the whole country. But when I live here, home is my bed or the place that I'm staying. And it's a whole different mindset. And that's the loss that I'm mourning.
Does that loss contain the people as a whole as well?
Yeah, the people, the culture, the experience, my experience, their experience, the synergy. There's just this, there used to be at least, from what I remember, it's been 15, 16, 17 years since I've been there. It used to be so peaceful and so, I don't know, there's this je ne sais quoi about the atmosphere. All of that combined. The food, the smells, the city itself, the buildings, the art.
It makes me wonder then, is there perhaps not room in your heart for anywhere else to be home?
I think what I'm struggling with is to try and find what is home. Like, because home is not really a place. It is something inside of me, and I think that's kind of where I'm at in my life right now, is struggling. What is it inside of me that is home?
Very cool. So, in that later portion of the book, and since we've talked a little bit about family, you mentioned the term gender box. And we touched on this a little bit, but you also refer back to your grandmother. So we get, again, another juxtaposition of a seemingly hostile, like being boxed in by the concepts of gender, while at the same time having this vivid and sweet connection to a maternal figure that is also from that place. Presumably a part of the walls of your gender box as well. Do you want to talk about that a little?
Yeah, there are a lot of layers in life, and none of them are neat. And all of them are juxtaposing, very contradictory. And that is one of the things that I was really angry about when it actually flowed out of me onto paper, was that I felt gender boxed from my grandmother, who I absolutely love and adore, and just all of the feels.
Yes.
And then I was like, but how could that be? How could I also be so upset with this? And I had to sit there for a moment and hold both of these spaces together and realize that she wasn't coming from a place of meanness or anything else, but that's just what she knew and what she grew up with, and the life all around her was like that. So she was just trying to give me the best life, trying to teach me the best things that she knew. That kind of helped me work through it and put that aside. But yeah, I still get a little upset feeling, from all of these people that I really love and trusted, that they kept putting me in this gendered box.
And now are things better, or is there a little bit more reception, or is it still a work in progress?
It's still a work in progress. My mother's like, but you had such long, beautiful hair, and you were always so girly. It was like, Yeah, but
People change.
But I didn't feel inside I was always girly. I kept telling myself, well, yeah, in a past life I was a man. I must have been. And so I just kept questioning, why is it a past life that I had to have been a man? And what is a man anyway? And what is a woman? And yeah.
So that's a good segue into body language seems to be a big presence both in this work and in the lovely works that we have on display behind you, and what it means to be within a specific body. This is something that interests you, yes?
Yeah.
I'm thinking, I'm thinking specifically of the series of photographs that are on the wall behind you, but which they're beautiful. It's beautiful work. Can we talk a little bit about that piece and the inspiration behind it, maybe?
Yeah. The inspiration actually comes from a rock concert.
Very cool.
I was at a Tool concert and I saw their fantastic laser show.
Yes.
And I saw these bodies just painted with light. And I was so inspired. I was like, I want to make a photo shoot out of this. So I tried it out. I was the creative director. I had a photographer friend of mine doing the photography. I found a model. It wasn't quite hitting where I wanted it to. And I took a photography class here through graduate studies. And my professor urged me, she's like, why don't you take the photos? So I got behind the camera for the first time in my life, and I started taking these photos, figuring out what it is I was trying to say. And I had other people's works that I was projecting onto bodies, and then she urged me, well, why don't you use your work to project onto bodies? And throughout that whole class, that whole semester, I was just trying to figure out, what is this? And I knew that there was something in the language, that I was this body movement, these sculptural poses, but I didn't know what it was. And then I ended up reading, after that semester, I was reading Sex at Dawn and learning about human sexuality, pre-civilization in our tribal cultures, and it just really shook my whole world and my beliefs about a lot of things. And it's like, oh, okay. And I started to unpack a lot of things that I was trying to say in this, and I realized this is actually a piece about gender, and gender identity and culture, and these ideas of how we project ourselves onto other people, but also how we can still be beautiful within those societal projections. And I like the idea of these bodies are performing under the gaze of me and the camera, but then again under the gaze of the people who are viewing the printed works. And through these projections of my own, so I'm reappropriating my own artwork of things I had done in the past that I hadn't really thought much about. I just sort of imbued society, imbued whatever was going on, made something, moved on, and then I looked back at it and I was like, oh, okay, I think I can, use this. One of them is a painting of a horse, and I call it Mayor. Now I call it Mayor because of this, because I see how women are supposed to be well-bred, and all these associations and metaphors with women and horses, and reappropriating my own works in that way.
Totally. It makes me think of another artist who, with a similar comparison to femininity and food products, she did a series of works that were like scratch and sniff. So they were photographic works, but then she did the chemistry behind it to make it to where you would go up and you would scratch it, and the photo of a woman would smell like a food. You are a transmedia artist. Now, I must admit, before I met you, I had never met a transmedia artist before. So, of course, it was very enticing to discover a new type of artistry, one that is naturally very appealing to me because I write and I create visual works. So what does that mean to you? And is it a title and a label that you like to own, or what?
Transmedia artist is just, a lot of people understand, at least from the media world and younger generations, understand what transmedia is. I'm not really married to it. It's just easier to talk about. What I see myself as is just a creator, an artist, in the really biggest, broadest sense of the word. To me, transmedia is not new at all. I'm actually drawing on very ancient artistic traditions. We used to tell We see, like Aborigines people, they have these beautiful song lines to create maps, mental maps through song and dance and performance and social communication, camaraderie, right?
Right.
And I'm taking these ancient artistic traditions that have been siloed through technological advances. Oh, this is writing, and you only do writing in this thing. And, in writing, then it's, subgenres, and you only do this kind of thing in this genre.
Right.
I'm stripping all that away and going back to what we used to know, but bringing in the new modern technology, like the printing press and how it's gotten us here to modern writing and, the cell phones and augmented reality. Just marrying these two things together.
Lovely. So at this point, is there a particular piece or body of work that you are most proud of your own work?
That's hard. Pick which one of these children that you like more.
I know exactly. I mean, it's all very impressive. These are very, very eye-catching. But I would just to know, like, your own personal attachment. If you had to spare one piece from the bonfire, what would it be?
All of them. Don't make me choose.
Okay, I won't. But that's beautiful because I come upon so many artists, both visual and of the written word, that they detest their own work once it's created. They enjoy the process of creation, but upon completion, they feel a strong sense of detachment to it. So.
No, I've spent so much time with these, really giving birth to these ideas. I'm so attached to all of them. My friends and partner are always like, you have to sell your work, let go of them. No, but I don't want to.
Valid. I imagine that for you, like, do you vend a lot? Do you like to, since you don't like to get rid of them, what about recreation or like reprints or things like that, even those?
I will do reprints. So sometimes I will make a piece very specifically for a certain person. That is wholeheartedly just for this one unique person in the whole wide world. And I will gift it to them. And it's not meant for me. It's not my work. It becomes theirs. And that's great. And then reprints are fine. Yeah.
But you just want to hold on to those originals, huh?
Yeah.
Fair, valid. What are you working on now?
Right now, my whole world is Alice in Dark. I really want to continue working on this piece. I call this Cause to Wonder. I'm riffing off of, I don't know if she would call herself an artist, but she uses magic, and she goes around to these underserved countries and teaches people how to be clean and healthy and wash their hands, and why drinking from a river that's filled with poo isn't good, and she uses magic to do that. And her whole project is called Cause to Wonder. It's so beautiful, and I wanted to kind of pay homage to that and like send people there too.
That's so cool.
But I'm also using it because I like it to be cause to wonder, like wondering about gender and culture and identity and all of these things.
Play in words.
Yeah, so I really want to get back to this one, but right now my whole world is Alice in Dark because that's my thesis project next semester. I just created a mobile app game. I don't know if you got to see it.
Yes, I had the joy of getting to play it actually in class. It was a lot of fun and very distracting from class. So I'm eagerly awaiting it to be available on something other than your phone.
Yeah. Needs a lot more work before that's ready.
TikTok. So obviously you're not originally a Houstonian. How do you feel about the Houston art scene and the community here?
I feel like it's really burgeoning, and there's a lot of room for growth and making your mark and all of that. And Houston is so open and so diverse that I really have been enjoying that. Yeah.
Has it been a welcoming environment?
I think so. I haven't really pushed myself out there as hard as I could, but the few places that I have been accepted to, the people that I've met are so open and welcoming, and they just love talking to me, and I've really enjoyed talking to them and making friends.
Yeah. I'm always trying to sell people in Houston, and I think it's an underrated town for sure.
Oh yeah,
So,
absolutely.
What's on the agenda next? Beyond Alice and Dark.
Alice and Dark, I don't know.
So that's next. You're trying to finish by the end of next semester.
So it's going to be a beta version.
Okay.
And it's not going to be complete. What I am hoping to do is to be able to take this really solid foundation to investors, whether that's Kickstarter, an angel investor, grants, whatever. Say, hey, this is where I'm at. I need the money to finish this. I want to get it done. We've been working on this project since 2008, 2009.
Mm-hmm.
It's time.
Well, I'm excited to see what you do and where you go with it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sitting down with me. I really appreciate it.
This was wonderful.